has been shown to disrupt your blood sugars and therefore increase your chances of getting diabetes, but also increasing its severity when you have it. It's also been linked to pancreatic cancer. We also have links to the lung and your breathing system. We also have connections to your bones. Have shown that oral inflammation and bacteria have been linked to the onset of osteoporosis as well as arthritis. We also have links to pregnancy. Women are not immune. Research has shown now that oral inflammation and men are not immune to, with men having higher risk for erectile dysfunction and both sexes having a higher incidence of infertility. The list goes on. If you have a look at their gums, and the reason why they do that is because your gums are so vascular you can absorb things directly into your bloodstream through your gums. All right. The other way that we use, and medical professionals use this all the time, is sublingual, under your tongue. If you've got heart pain, if you know anyone with angina, they give you a spray, you spray it under your tongue and you can get relief from your symptoms of angina within a couple of seconds to a minute with nitroglycerin spray, solely because it bypasses all of the filters in the rest of your body and goes straight into your blood supply underneath your tongue. And so we now have vitamins and minerals that are being made for you to take them sublingually so that you can absorb these vitamins and minerals bypassing all the filtration system for your body, because we know that if you take a pill, let's say of magnesium or vitamin D or a drug, only 2 to 5% of that drug actually makes it into your bloodstream through this filter. Whereas if you can give it sublingually, you can get almost all of it into your bloodstream. So the issue that we have is if we can get this much absorption in your mouth for good things, it also means we can get this much absorption for things that aren't so great. So with the best absorption comes also best reactions. Who here has heard of anaphylaxis? All right. Anaphylaxis occurs because your body is picking up stuff that you're eating or even enters your mouth before you even swallow it, right? This is how well we absorb, right? And that whole premise of allergy, obviously it's something that you shouldn't be having. If you have anaphylaxis to peanuts, don't eat peanuts. But the fact that your body can recognize it even before you swallow shows the power of absorption that we have, especially through the mouth. We have geographic tongue, which I won't go into, but is basically a condition where you have geographical shapes that don't hurt and don't really have any symptoms, that sit around on your tongue and they constantly move around in different areas. And we're finding research that's suggesting that this is one of the first signs that your body can give you that you have a food or chemical intolerance. And again, this is all because of infiltration. We also have the infiltration of bacteria. Okay? If we can get the infiltration of nutrients sublingually into your bloodstream, bacteria can also do the same thing, and toxins as well. If you've ever had breakfast cereal in the morning and you have a glass of milk, or you have milk with your cereal and then you feel a little bit gluggy, you feel a little bit, your nose clogs up a little bit, and that can be a really good example of the body reacting to dairy if you have a dairy intolerance. And so we have this term called leaky gut. Who's heard of leaky gut? Right? Most people have heard of leaky gut because there's this big thing, irritable bowel syndrome, leaky gut. Basically, the premise behind this is your gut becomes inflamed and the barrier between your gut and your bloodstream kind of opens up and separates a little bit and allows stuff that's not supposed to get through. Right? And so then you get allergies and you have more intolerances to more things. And we know that all autoimmune diseases stem from this premise of stuff getting through your gut into bloodstream that's not supposed to get there. In your mouth, we have the same thing, but the term's not so well known, called leaky gum. All right? If you have gum inflammation and your gums are inflamed, the barrier between your gum that's preventing bacteria and toxins from getting into your bloodstream, right, starts breaking down and allows all of these toxins in. Now, we have 7 out of 10 causes of death worldwide are lifestyle and diet related diseases. Now, if we transcribe that into Western culture like Australia, UK, America, it's 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10, according to the World Health Organization, of our killers are to do with diet and lifestyle. And most of those lifestyle related diseases stem back to diet. And most of the diet does what? Enters your mouth. So if we can curb and change the way that we do things with our mouths, we can actually change the way that our body works and get ourselves heading towards optimal health. So, telling you all the bad stuff doesn't really help. What's some stuff that we can do to take control of this system so that we can head towards optimal health? Some of these things you will think are arbitrary, and I already know these, but I guarantee you there's some twists to this stuff. So, toothbrush. Who here uses one? Awesome. Now, unfortunately, in Australia, no matter how many letters we write to the Dental Association and to companies, they still sell toothbrushes that aren't soft. All right? You can still buy medium and hard ones, and if you've ever tried a hard toothbrush, you could probably also polish your shoe with it, right? They're extremely hard, right? Some of the bristles on toothbrushes are 1 to 1.2 millimeters to 2 millimeters wide in diameter. All right? The average toothbrush in Australia has 140 to 150 bristles. All right? What I would like you guys to be aiming for, and all of my patients and everyone I talk to, is we need to be finding something that is a lot softer than that. Now, the thicker the bristle, the stronger the filament. Right? Right? So we want to be aiming for something that has like 5,000 bristles, not 150 maybe. And there's a company out there called Curaprox now, who has now brought out a toothbrush that has 12,400 bristles in the same size head. All right, they are 0.08 of a millimeter thick. Right, so they bend when you blow on them. They're that soft, right? That's the kind of toothbrush we should be using, something super soft. We have this preconception that if I can't feel it scratching, it's not doing its job. That is incorrect, archaic information. All right, well, you don't want to feel it. You don't want to feel it brushing. We should actually be thinking about it from this perspective. Is this going to play? Can you see if you can make that thing play? So this is a video, if it plays, of the way that we should be brushing. But in case it doesn't play, I'll explain it. We tend to think of brushing as brushing, but when you brush your hair, when you brush your shoes, when you brush the sidewalk, what action do you do? Straight up and down. When we brush our teeth, we should be thinking less of it like brushing and more like massaging. We want to be doing small circular movements over that tooth, not back and forth, because that's how we create damage. Secondly, we want to actually be angling that toothbrush at 45 degrees to your gum so that you're actually getting a gum massage, not just brushing. If we change the culture around brushing, we will find that brushing is actually enjoyable. So, that's okay. I'll just go to the next slide. So, the next way that we can take control. So, number one, toothbrush and how you use your toothbrush. Make sure you get a soft one. For those of you who use electric, do not use the heads that they give you in the packet. Go and buy yourself sensitive heads. They're the only heads they make for electric toothbrushes that are actually soft. Everything else is classified as medium. And any manual toothbrush or electric toothbrush that has flappy paddles on it, or rubber cups, or fancy doodads that you see on TV that are supposed to give you an extra awesome clean, throw them in the bin. They do absolutely nothing for you except take up space that should be bristles. So the next one is mouthwash. Who here uses mouthwash? Cool. I'm about to break some things. Mouthwash is an amazing product that was developed to assist people and generate lots of income. All right? They even make sugary substitute mouthwashes for kids now, which don't have actually sugar in them, but they are sweet so that kids want to rinse their mouth with them all the time. Mouthwashes have lots of dangerous things, and I don't have enough time to explain all the ins and outs of why mouthwashes are bad. However, the main thing about mouthwashes is they are bactericidal. And what bactericidal means is they kill bacteria instantly on contact, okay? And we might think that that sounds like a great idea. However, who here would like to say that right now in this moment their mouth is more good than it is bad? Yeah, you got more good bacteria in your mouth than you have bad bacteria in this moment, right? We would like to think that we have a relatively healthy mouth. If you have more good bacteria in your mouth than bad, and you drop a nuclear bomb inside your mouth, what are you killing more of? The good stuff. So if we have a regime of general well-being where we are nuking our mouth every day, we are killing more good than bad. We are resetting the clock to who's the fastest proliferator in our mouth to recolonize our mouth with bacteria, and we reset that clock every day. I'm not saying don't use mouthwash. What I'm saying is it should not be part of our everyday regime where we use it every single day, twice a day. It should be used when the ratio has flipped. We wake up one morning and we have really bad breath, or we've got some ulcers, or we've got some cuts, or we've got some infections in our mouth. Then we're skewing the ratio this way, and mouthwash is killing a lot more bad than good. All right, floss. Who uses floss? Excellent. So this is, I think, this is the third thing out of 4 things I'm going to share with you today of how we can take care of get our oral health condition good and head our way towards optimal health. Floss, let's do this. Floss, we've been told that you should only floss the ones you want to keep, right? Floss is not as great as we've been told, okay? And I primarily tell my patients to avoid flossing unless they have to floss, okay? If you have flossing contact between your teeth and you're moving the floss between your teeth and it's going, right? Then you have a really tight contact. The chances of you getting food stuck between there and bacteria stuck between there that's going to cause you oral conditions is very low. If you put your floss between teeth and it feels like you're throwing a hot dog down a hallway, then floss is not doing anything for you because there's bacteria on the left and bacteria on the right and your floss went through the middle, right? So there's only very few occasions when floss is actually doing something beneficial, and the American Dental Association has now removed its recommendation off their website without telling anyone because they don't want to create a hoo-ha about it, because the evidence has come out over the last 10 years to show that it does nothing. And it doesn't actually improve your oral health as much as they keep telling you that it does. So if we can't floss, or we shouldn't floss unless there's something physically stuck and you need to get it out, which I think floss is great for, we have this thing called interdental cleaning, okay? And what that means is you use a little brush that goes in between underneath your contact point that's specifically designed and made for the size of the gap, all right? If your gap's this big between your 2 front teeth, then using floss is irrelevant, but you can use something that's big and thick, all right? If you've got little gaps, you can use that, okay? Again, if you think about it, if we pushed this chair up against the wall as hard as we could, okay, and there was no gap between the chair and the wall, and then we ran a piece of string between the chair and the wall, and we did that every day for the next year, how close is the chair to the wall? There's a gap now, right? So as we floss every single day through a really tight contact, what we're actually doing is opening that contact and allowing more food and bacteria to get stuck between teeth, okay? The other way is with a water flosser, okay? These are a relatively new thing that's come about in the last couple of years, which produce a high pressure water jet. Now I'm not talking like the kind of high pressure hoses you see commercial guys using to like delaminate concrete, okay? These are relatively high pressure for the mouth, but you can use them to clean all your interproximal areas between your teeth. You can put essential oils in them, you can put warm salty water in them, you can use irrigants, but what they do is a gentle flush to get rid of that plaque and bacteria without damaging your gums and without opening up those pores. One of the things that is, I guess, works against us when we floss is almost none of us floss perfectly. So when we floss, we'll go tick, and we'll hit our gums, and who's bled when they flossed, right? We've all bled when we floss. And the reason is we don't do it perfectly, and when we do floss, we hit our gums and we tear them open, right? Now, instead of that gum being a barrier for bacteria getting into your bloodstream, you just split it open and let all the bacteria flood into that area and cause yourself more harm than good. Now the body's got to heal it, okay? So, using interproximal brushes and water flossing and water flossers, and only flossing when you absolutely have to in areas that you have food getting stuck, is going to really amp your conditions. If you've got black triangles, you're getting a little bit of gum recession, you may find that if you stop flossing for up to 2 or 3 months, that your gum actually goes back up into that area and you get higher gum than you had before simply because you stopped flossing. And last but not least, and I left this to last in case they kick me off for talking for too long, is toothpaste. All right, I'm assuming that we all use toothpaste. Yeah, awesome. So we are told by dental professionals to spit and don't rinse. Who's heard that? Yeah? Brush your teeth with your toothpaste, spit it out, but don't rinse. So let the good stuff from the toothpaste soak into your teeth all night long and for the rest of the day. All right? This is what Colgate toothpaste has on the back of the packet. Can anybody see the magical words there on the top line? Do not swallow. If you spit your toothpaste and don't rinse it out, what are you doing? Swallowing it. And yet, the actual manufacturer tells you not to do that. This is another one, Sensodyne. What does it say in bold at the top? Do not swallow. And here's one which is a healthy alternative toothpaste, the #1 recommended toothpaste in Australia, currently based on personal preference and taste. Grants also says at the top, do not swallow. Okay? Now, you've got to ask yourself if companies of these major toothpaste brands are asking you not to swallow their product, what is in the product that is telling them to ask you not to swallow it and keep out of reach of children. And we all know that they say that children should use toothpaste, and yet on the back of the packet of the children's toothpaste it says keep out of reach of children and do not swallow. All right? So you've got to ask yourself what's going on. This is an unbranded, because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. It's a little bit small, but I'll read it out. This is just an ingredients list of one of the major toothpastes in Australia. Okay, oops. And in that list, the third ingredient is hydrated silica. Hydrated silica is just watery sand. It's used as an abrasive to give you that shiny clean. We've also got things like sodium lauryl sulfate in there. Sodium lauryl sulfate is a frothing surfactant agent which they used to put in shampoo before they realized it was carcinogenic, and so they don't want you to soak it into your brain, so they don't put it in shampoo anymore. What do they keep it in? Toothpaste, and then spit, don't rinse, so you swallow it. A carcinogen. Excellent. Also, we have zinc oxide, which is also an abrasive, and the only reason it is in there is to make your toothpaste white. Some of the other toothpastes have a substance called titanium dioxide in there, which also makes toothpaste white. And if you go online and Google Skittles, they're currently in a multi-billion-dollar lawsuit in America for putting titanium dioxide inside of Skittles to make them white, when they found that it's actually harmful for people and kids are over-consuming Skittles. There's also, if you have a look on this list, if you can see it, benzyl alcohol. Alcohol is also a known carcinogen, and that's why they've taken it out of most mouthwashes, because it contributes to oral cancer, and yet it's in this toothpaste, which I find very interesting. And the second to last ingredient, not even going to mention Palaxima 407, which is a microplastic that they put in toothpaste, but phosphoric acid is the second to last ingredient in this toothpaste. This is one of the top 4 toothpastes sold in Australia, and it has acid in it. Not only does it have acid in it, it has phosphoric acid in it, which is the same acid that they use to clean truck engines and clean coins, if you've ever done those experiments with Coca-Cola. All right, Coca-Cola has phosphoric acid as one of its main ingredients, and so this toothpaste has phosphoric acid in it. So, I'm not talking here and getting up here on my soapbox to tell you to, boycott toothpaste, etc. All I'm simply sharing with you here is that the mouth is the gateway to optimal health. And I hope that through this presentation I have shown you that you have crazy amounts of absorption that can happen from your mouth, right? And if you have crazy amounts of absorption happening in your mouth, we need to be very careful and very smart about what we put in our mouth. And that includes toothpaste and oral cleaning chemicals, because I see all the time firsthand the amount of chemical damage that people are coming to me and seeing me with from everyday chemicals, from toothpastes and from foods that they are putting in their mouth. And just by being smart about what we are happy, all right, to put into our mouths, all I'm saying is read the back of your labels. If you see something that you don't think you should swallow, maybe don't buy that one. And find something alternative that's going to do the same job without potentially causing some toxicity. The mouth is the gateway to your optimal health, and you can start by reducing your risks of all of these chronic conditions and all of these systems of the body, as we showed today, simply by taking care of your mouth, keeping it clean, and watching what you put in it. And I hope you learned something today, because I definitely continually learn, and I love the research that's coming out that's constantly pushing us to do better for our patients and to actually improve the well-being of people. And something as simple as keeping your mouth clean can have amazing and huge effects on your whole body. So thank you for letting me share with you.
All right, that was quite a presentation. Oh, I've learned quite a lot. I was just thinking, when can we get Dr. Nathaniel back in here once again? Well, for those who are here, you can see that it would have been really good to have this whole place full of people. And so I encourage you once again to share this information with those who are not able to make it. In fact, this is being taped at the moment, so you can actually share these presentations, obviously the full package, including the final presentation, with those friends and families who were not privileged to be here. So the next presenter is Dr. Isaac, and Dr. Isaac will be presenting on fiber. But let me just once again hand the mic over to him so he can actually introduce himself. Oh, questions. We actually had just planned for a what do we call it? Just presentation after presentation kind of thing. But yeah, that's a good question. Ask questions afterwards? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. But once again, I'll let Dr. Isaac give a little bit of an introduction of himself so that we can get to understand, his background and then obviously enjoy the presentation that he'll be sharing.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I was born in Kenya and lived in China, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, and before coming to settle in Australia. Used to work in hospitals before, but when I came to Australia 20 years ago, I went into general practice. I did that up to 2016 when I went into preventive health. So these days what I do mostly is to focus on things that help people avoid getting sick. So this kind of thing that Nathaniel was talking about is the kind of stuff that excites me these days. So today I could like us to talk about fiber. In 1956, it's a British surgeon who went to Uganda as a missionary doctor to a small rural hospital in northern Uganda. Uganda is in East Africa. While he was in London, at least every month he had about 2 cases of large bowel cancer. Just about every month he had about 2 cases, new cases. So when he went to Uganda, having known that that was a serious problem, he was on the lookout for this problem amongst the people that he saw. But for about 6 years, he did not have a single case. So in 1962, he went to London, the Surgeons Conference, to make a presentation, and his thesis then was there was no difference between the people in London and those in Uganda constitutionally. The difference was what they ate. And they noted that in Uganda there was no access to refined foods. People went to their garden, picked up potatoes, bananas, you name it. Came and cooked, or some they ate raw. In those years, all textbooks on medicine did not have anything to do with fiber. Fiber was known to be size of fiber that was used for making gunny bags and things like that. At that time, books had roughage as an ingredient in our diet that was supposed to be considered. By the 70s, books still contained roughage. By the 80s, books had started writing about fiber. By the 90s, fiber was now distinguished from soluble to insoluble and so on and so forth. By the 2000s, it was come to be understood that fiber did a lot more than what was previously thought. So this man I was talking about is, let's go to the next slide, please. He's called Dennis Bucket. He died recently. Do we have a, can you move to the next slide, please? Dennis Bucket observed, oh, thank you. The curious, could you please, we can give someone who's got quicker fingers to flick it to the next one. Oh, thanks. Yeah. Don't know whether you can read that. Over the years, he actually stopped doing surgeries and started working very hard to get the world to understand the role of fiber in our diet. His observation that to this day is quoted all over the place is that societies that eat unrefined foods produce large stools and they build small hospitals. And those that eat fiber-depleted foods produce small stools and build large hospitals. Next one. So what is fiber? It is an essential component. We need to have enough of this stuff in our diets because it grants us protection against a lot. Can we go to the next one? That's a graphic presentation of what Dennis Bucket observed. Let's go next one. That is an important one. So there are 3 kinds of fiber, and they do different things. One kind holds lots of water. One kind essentially making things bulky. The second kind makes things smooth or lubricates. The third kind, which was most recently discovered, increases the likelihood of stuff fermenting. And that fermentation, some of the stuff that we cannot digest, is what is processed by bacteria to produce lots of stuff that helps us, goes to our brains. That is what refining of food does. It gets rid of 60 to 80% of the B group of vitamins. 84% of iron is lost when food is refined. 50% of calcium is lost, 71% of zinc, 72% of manganese, and fiber, 90% of it goes when the food is refined. So what does it do? Generally, it makes us feel full for longer. It helps us manage weight and stay regular in our bowel movements. And so there are three types of fiber. One is soluble, the other one is insoluble, and there is one that is resistant, we can't digest. And each one of those plays a different role. The next one is a bit crowded. I'll be happy to share this picture with you to go and have a look at it. It is critical to actually have this stuff in our diets. If you look at the kind of things that fiber helps us do, it is mind-boggling that science took forever to be able to understand this. In the 1880s, we were advised then by a non-medical person to actually ensure we have food that is not processed. But science didn't catch up until much later, because there are certain things you get only in food that has not been processed. So soluble fiber, in short, it is like a bulking agent, keeps us feeling full longer, and soluble fiber also lowers cholesterol. It picks that up and it drives it out. When there is so much cholesterol in the system, people generally tend to pass stools that have got characteristic of being lined with cholesterol. When it's so much, it is a condition that is recognized. Oats, for instance, have got stuff called beta glucan. That is the one that picks up the cholesterol. It's the one that, sorry, thank you. It's the one that picks up the cholesterol and takes it out. So you get it from oats, legumes, fruits, vegetables, especially the fresh kind. The insoluble one prevents constipation. It's found in parts of food which are not digestible. So they pass through as it comes. You get it from wheat bran, brown rice, whole grain bread, and the skins of fruits that we like to throw away usually. Resistant one, it is the one that promotes the development of good bacteria in the gut. These bacteria, now they are understood to actually help boost our immunity. The chemicals they produce in the course of breaking down the fiber that we cannot digest makes its way to the brain, and it's been known to actually help with stabilizing mood and keeping us healthy in terms of our metabolism and weight control. You get this from unripened bananas, onions. whole grain pasta, rice, potatoes, black green tea, and so on and so forth. So how much fiber should we have? Generally, 25 grams women, 30 for men. Considering generally size and stuff. The critical thing that we have to learn is to read labels. If you read labels, you are most likely to actually identify what contains enough of what we need to have. How to meet our dietary needs? We need at least anything that has got 3 to 6 grams of fiber per serve. Whole grains generally is what we need. Some people say you can't get proteins if you don't eat meats. Generally, if you substitute meat with legumes, you will be able to meet your fiber needs if you add them at least 5 days a week, a serving of legumes. Plenty of fruits and vegetables. Now, if we go back to the first picture, the first slide, sorry, keep going, that one. All of those things have got one common feature in all of them, fiber. The quantities may be different, but all of them are rich in fiber. You don't get them in things that are not plants, sadly. You only get fiber from plants. And if we, keep going, if we ensure that we have several of those kinds of foods every day, with every meal, you almost like will be able to meet your fiber needs. Why do we need it? It's essential. It helps improve sugar regulation, and it, more importantly, helps us to increase the quantity of what is now known as the gut microbiome. Essentially, the population of good bacteria in the gut. That has been known even to affect mental health in a significant way when we don't have enough of that. Buckets. When he was in Uganda, he did an experiment. Can we go next one? These are berries. So he wanted to find out, you know, in London, most of the people are having one bowel movement in 4 days. In some cases, 1 week, some people, or twice a week. So the transit times were quite long. In Uganda, he gave his patients these berries, very, very red berries, and told them to come back and report to the hospital when they saw their stools red like those berries. He was expecting them to come maybe after 2 days or so. Some people are coming back, within, before the end of the day, really. 6, 7, 8 hours. Doctor, I've seen it. And one after another, they were running the hospital to report to him. So every one of them was actually having transit time shortened compared to what he was seeing in London. What is the significance of that? It is important because stuff that should actually go through, when it stays on the wall of the intestines, it produces toxins. Those toxins sticking close to the wall for an extended period of time, they end up changing the cells in that wall. And changing the cells is called dysplasia. And eventually that is the kind of stuff that leads to bowel cancers. You want a broom to sweep things through so nothing stays on the way to actually cause problems. Fiber is your broom. If you want things to be swept through, all right, without much delay, you want fiber. Now this is what Bucket described the US to be, a nation constipated from east, or rather from coast to coast. It is quite common for anyone who does not have enough fiber. So fiber will protect us against constipation and a number of other things. That shows how much fiber is in various things. Just check what lentils have. Look at brown rice, 3. Lentils, 15. Butter beans, 10. Raspberries, 8. So you want to go for those things that have got more of the stuff. Next one. Now look at what the Western diet mostly has and what we should actually have. The fiber quantity is generally considerably reduced in the standard Western diet as compared to the optimal. No wonder people have got problems. Constipation, chronic, that is a description. You go next one, please. Yeah. That is the definition. Movements are hard most of the time, or 25% of the time actually. Emptying is incomplete. Sometimes manual maneuvers are required. Common causes: not enough fiber, not enough water, not enough physical activity. People run, people walk a lot. They generally don't have, gravity helps a lot. They don't have problems. Medical conditions that affect, rather that are responsible for constipation: you have thyroid that is not working well, diabetes, irritable bowel syndrome, and anxiety or depression. There are medications such as iron supplements, some antihistamines, antacids, and several other medications that will cause that. Benefits of high fiber: you have weight loss, the health of our intestines is improved, blood sugar controlled, and it is protective against cancers such as bowels. I guess you can remember this. Go next two slides. Skip next one. Anyone remembers this? We used to put it up for kids in the clinics, but actually it's very good for everyone. We need to have that kind of food every day. If you do that, you will not only have benefits with the mental health, bowel health, and weight control, and the whole lot. It is things that we neglect many times, but do not. And again, if you want to live very long, healthy and productive, have more of that stuff on your plate. I think I will stop here, and there will be some questions maybe later or now. Fiber. If we do not have it, and let no one deceive anyone that you can get fiber from animal products, only plants. Plants. Yeah. Thank you very much.
That was quite a lot to take in, wasn't it? And you know, as I was looking at that final image, yeah, I realized that all the legumes that Dr. Isaac just mentioned wasn't really in that final picture. Maybe they need to use, you know, where they have the teeth in that image, right? So they should probably have beans maybe there as the teeth, isn't it? Because obviously, for me, the takeaway message is that we need a lot of legumes. That is very, very important. Well, once again, without further ado, I'll just introduce our next presenter for our final presentation. This is going to be, once again, one of those presentations that you always remember and you always look forward to, because it's going to take you way back through ancient history and then bring you right into the future. And so this is, once again, a message, rather a presentation worth sharing with our friends. And so we wait for our next presenter to prepare himself, and then we'll launch straight into this. Don't you wish there were more other people here? But you know what? We actually have a lot following on the live stream, so that's very good. So we are grateful for the advancement of technology. Today we are able to present here and have a bigger audience. And so thank you, and welcome. In fact, I won't mention who you are. You'll probably introduce yourself to us, because many of us here are probably seeing you for the first time. So maybe you, first and foremost, let us know, who you are and what you're doing in South Australia.
Okay. Oh, I've got this mic, haven't I?
Yes.
Gary Webster's my name, and I actually look after a whole lot of people who share messages on prophecy around the South Pacific region. I have also dug in the Middle East, and I take tours to the Middle East so that people can see some of the places connected with the Bible land.
I think the mic is muted. Sorry.
Like that. How about that?
Maybe,
Want me to do that again?
Yeah, let's do that again.
Okay. Yeah, Gary Webster's my name. I have a degree in archaeology, and I take people to the Middle East quite often so that they can see some of the things connected with the biblical material. Also, I look after a whole lot of people who share that sort of thing right across the South Pacific region, from Perth out to French Polynesia. So that's the sort of thing that I do. Now, this afternoon, I wonder if I can just share this next presentation. I want to talk about some of the practices that were in ancient Egypt when it came to health, and also in the nation of Israel. So we'll go there in just a moment. I've called the presentation "None of These Diseases." By the way, anybody travelled to the Middle East? Okay, right. You'll be able to check on me to make sure we're telling the truth here, eh? We'll get the presentation up in just a moment here. All right, there we go. Talking about health and healing in ancient Egypt and Israel. I want to begin at the Dead Sea here. The Dead Sea is a great place to learn to swim because you can't sink. But here at the Dead Sea in 1947, some young Bedouin boys were minding the clan's goats at a place called Qumran when one of them strayed up into some caves. The boys took a stone and threw it at the goat in order to get it back again. The stone missed the goat and went into a cave, and they heard the sound of breaking pots, and so they raced up there hoping that they would find some treasure. But all they found were these old pots that you can see here. And these pots had some old scrolls in them that date way back, as we're going to see in a moment. Well, they took them to the Bedouin clan, and the Bedouin clan took them to Bethlehem to an antiquities dealer by the name of Mr. Kando, who bought them for the amazing price of $100. Now, those scrolls just a few years later sold for about $500,000. So that's pretty good money. And today they're of course priceless, and they're known as the Dead Sea Scrolls for obvious reasons, being found at the Dead Sea. Now, why are they so priceless? Why are they so valuable? Because number one, they're very old. and anything old fetches a good price. How old are they? Well, we know from the style of the writing, the script style, and the radiocarbon dating that was done on them, and coins that were found with them, that these date back to about 100 to 200 years BC. So they about 2,200 years old, some of these scrolls. Now, these Dead Sea Scrolls contain very sound scientific health principles that we'll see in just a moment. But now let's go back to ancient Egypt. The Egyptians actually had a lot of pretty good medical practices for their time. They were ahead of most civilizations. Some of the things they did, we were going to see, were quite wacky, but they were not too bad considering their times. Here is the temple at Komombo. This is on the way from Luxor to Aswan, and you'll notice when you look inside this temple that they've got some surgical instruments. These are some of the instruments they use on the right and on the left there to do operations, to do gynecological procedures and so on, obstetrical procedures I should say, and these are on the temple walls here. Now the Egyptians practiced surgery. They didn't go down too deep because they didn't have anaesthetics, so that wasn't such a smart idea, but they could do surface things. They could heal fractures and so on. They even were very good also at obstetrics and gynecology for their time. Here's a lady on a birthing stool, you'll notice there on your left. These are actually mentioned in the biblical records in Exodus chapter 3, and we see that they had them here. Notice this lady giving birth on the right, bit of a rude entry into the world. It would look a bit like a calf getting born or something, wouldn't it? But here is an Egyptian stylized diagram of giving birth. But the Egyptians had some very interesting medical remedies that they used as well. Here are some of the papyrus documents that they found, some of these remedies and their health practices. You'll notice the Ebers papyrus, a very famous papyrus like paper, and then of course the Edwin Smith papyrus. These date back to about 1500 BC. Now, they believed, for example, that bloodletting was a good practice. Now, we know this is positively dangerous, of course. I think it was George Washington that lost his life when they stuck leeches all over him to suck off some of the blood, but this is not a good practice. Number two, eye problem. If you have an eye problem, they said, pour in hot broken glass into the eye. Well, I guess that'd fix the eye, the problem, because you wouldn't have an eye anymore to get wrecked, would you? And number three is very interesting. This was for baldness. If you're bald, apply goose fat and crocodile dung. I guess that's my problem. I'm going a bit bald. I haven't used some of that lately, you know. but this is an interesting remedy. How about splinters? Apply worm's blood and ass's dung. Little wonder they got lockjaw tetanus and all that sort of thing. Now we smile at some of this sort of thing. But as I said, they had some wacky ideas among some of the good things they did. Now the Ebers papyrus, just so that we can get an idea, this date back to 1500 BC, which brings us to a man who talked quite a lot about health principles. This is actually the date of Moses. I'm sure we've all heard of Moses. Hollywood sort of made him famous in a couple of movies. But Moses actually wrote some of the documents among the Dead Sea Scrolls, and these are the ones that have very sound scientific health principles. So what are these scrolls that date back to 100 to 200 BC? Well, among them are actually, the biggest proportion were copies of what we would call the Old Testament, part of the Bible, that you may have seen. In a hotel, you may have a copy of one yourself. I hope you do. Some great things in it. So these contained every part of the Old Testament except the book of Esther was found. Among them, the writings of Moses, 100 to 200 BC are the copies. The originals, of course, went way back to 1500 BC. That doesn't matter too much. I mean, it helps us to know they're even older. But as you're going to see, even 100 to 200 BC, a long way ahead of what we had in much more recent times when it came to sound scientific health principles. Sorry about the pictures. I think getting on from a PC to a Mac has sort of messed up all the graphics. It didn't look like that before. All right, now Moses was raised and trained by the Egyptians. The Bible actually tells us, let's notice the passage, at this time Moses was born and was brought up in his father. Now his father was an Israelite. By the way, the name Moses is not an Israelite name, that's an Egyptian name. You can see that by some of the names of the pharaohs when you look at history of Egypt. Tutmoses, Moses, Ka-Moses, Ra-Moses. Moses is common to all of those, means drawn out of. Or drawn out by the god Tut or Thoth, and drawn out by the god Ra, and so on. At this time Moses was born and was brought up in his father, an Israelite's house. Pharaoh's daughter took him away and brought him up as her own son. And Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. Okay? So there's Moses. He's brought up in Egypt after 12 years of age, and he went to the University of Egypt. Now, he would have known about some of those things if he was trained in all their ways. He would have known about some of these things back in those times because he lives at those times himself. Now, imagine if Moses had included in his writings some of those wacky things that we find in the Ebers Papyrus. Bloodletting, eye problems, use, glass, baldness and splinters. Imagine if he had included those things. The Bible would have been dismissed as rubbish, for sure, and rightly so, if that was in it. But you notice none of those things are actually in the biblical records. Not one of those things is there, coming from the same time. But Moses does have a lot of other very sound scientific health principles in his writings without that wacky stuff. Let me give you a few illustrations. Number one, there's a lady who wants to come in there. And number one, there were sound scientific health principles such as hygiene principles to stop the spread of disease. The Bible talks about hand washing and washing your body. Notice this one. Numbers, written by Moses. All those who touch a dead body must wash their clothes and bathe themselves, and that evening they will be cleansed of their defilement. Now you can rest assured that the Israelites way back then had no clues about viruses and bacteria and all of that sort of thing and parasites. But God provided ways that they would avoid these things by giving them instructions about how to care for their bodies this way. Now, not just after touching a dead body, however, it was also given when you have a sore or something. When he who has a discharge is cleansed of his discharge, he shall count for himself 7 days for his cleansing, wash his clothes, and bathe his body in running water, then he shall be clean. Now, people didn't know about this sort of thing in fairly recent times. Here we go back to the 1840s to the Vienna General Hospital, which at this time was one of the creme de la creme hospitals in Europe back in the 1840s. There came to this hospital a doctor by the name of Ignaz Semmelweis. Now, Ignaz Semmelweis was put in charge of one of the maternity wards in this hospital, where the death rate among pregnant women in that ward was going through the ceiling. And so Dr. Ignaz decided to just observe for a while what was going on, and he noticed this sort of thing happening. A woman or a few women would die during the night, and the first thing that doctors would do in the morning would be to do an autopsy on these women. And with their students, going and putting their hands through the body and, trying to find out different things, they would move straight into the maternity ward and do pelvic examinations on the women who were alive and not washing their hands. And he thought, I wonder whether we ought to wash our hands between a dead body and a living body. So he introduced a practice on his ward that you had to wash your hands. And immediately the death rate dropped in his ward. He noticed after some months the death rate went up again. And he thought, what's going on now? So he watched again and he noticed that doctors would do pelvic examinations on living women and then go straight to the other living women without washing their hands between the two living women. So he thought, maybe we should wash our hands from one to another. So he did that. And of course the death rate plummeted again. But the doctors actually didn't like that fussy habit of washing your hands. And so they got rid of this guy out of the hospital, and again the death rate shot through the roof. Now, of course, we smile at that because the first thing you're going to notice when you go to a hospital, when you turn off taps, your elbows and you're all scrubbed up, aren't you? But we didn't know that until fairly recently. That's the point. Yet it was in the Bible some 3,000 years ago, 3,500. The Bible even talks about quarantining. You'll notice this. The Israelites, of course, were wandering through the Sinai desert according to the biblical records, and so they would need to watch what they're doing. He shall be unclean. All the days he has the sore, he shall be unclean. He is unclean, and he shall dwell alone. His dwelling shall be outside the camp. So if you've got some sort of a sickness, go outside away from everybody. We get that, don't we, over the last 3 years or so, with global lockdowns and quarantining and so on. We understand that, but we haven't always understood that. That's the point, yet the Bible did. What about the Bible and human waste? Notice what are they going to do when they're wandering around the desert with nearly 1.5 million people? Each of you must have a spade, a shovel, as part of your equipment. Whenever you relieve yourself, go to the toilet, dig a hole with the spade and cover the excrement. Well, good idea. All right. Now, do you know, we have not always known that sort of thing you think about the Dark Age period or the Middle Ages. We call it, the medieval period and so on. This was the sort of thing that would happen in some of these cities. The potty was in the kitchen. Good place for a potty. Or a bed chamber, all right? And what are you going to do with that thing when it fills up? Well, you're going to empty it out the window during the night on the street below. The problem is all the neighbours are doing the same thing. No wonder sometimes they wore shoes to keep above the level. You think about it. Why? You can understand when you think of what was happening in Europe, why they had some of these terrible outbreaks of plague and so on, Black Death and so on. The hygiene was very poor in Europe. They could have known it if they'd only read the Bible. But of course the Bible was often banned, and it was in the language of Latin and Greek and was not allowed to be translated into the language of the people. Now, ignorance caused a great deal of problems, but it was there in the Bible all those years. So that's the point. 3,500 years ago, the Bible instructed people on things like hand washing, quarantining, and toilet placement. And in fact, it's only been known in the last 1 to 200 years, these health principles have been rediscovered. Notice in the Encyclopedia of Medical History what it has to say about this. The interesting comment they make. The idea of contagion, passing on disease from people to people, was foreign to the classic medical tradition and found no place in the voluminous Hippocratic writings. Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine. The Old Testament, says this medical book, the Old Testament, however, is a rich source for contagious sentiment. So even medical science acknowledges the Bible gets it right when it comes to these principles. Now, very sound scientific health principles we find even more in Moses' writings especially. Notice, for example, Moses was given the sound dietary principles. One was avoid animal fat. Speak to the children of Israel, saying, you shall eat no manner of fat of ox or of sheep or of goat. Now, of course, if you've got a heart problem, you go to the doctor, the first thing he's going to say, what are you eating, isn't it? Cut back on that red meat and all that sort of stuff. He's going to give you that sort of advice. You don't want to have fats in your diet, and to that huge amount of fat, I should say, that you find in animal fats. That sort of fat's not good for us. Cut back on the meats. Now, we know scientifically it's now widely accepted that diets high in animal fats are unhealthy. that reducing saturated fat, that's animal fat, helps lower the risk of heart disease. The American Heart Association recommends limiting saturated fats, which are found in butter, cheese, red meat, and other animal-based foods. Decades of sound science has proven it can raise your bad cholesterol and put you at a higher risk for heart disease. So we know that. We get that a lot today, don't we? But the Bible had it. Another one the Bible had was plant-based diet is best for optimal health. In fact, on the very first page of the Bible, this is what it says. God said, "Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree, yielding seed, to you it shall be for food." So you can see there, that's a vegetarian diet there. Fruits, nuts, grains, vegetables, and so on. And of course, medical science backs that up today. From Dan Buchanan in the National Geographic magazine article back in 2020, meals developed over generations based on whole grains, greens, nuts and beans offer the promise of eluding disease and staying healthy. And Dr. Isaac was just talking about some of that sort of thing. Lily Henderson from across the ditch to New Zealand. There's no debating the science. A diet packed with plant foods does wonders for your health. And that's true, isn't it? I like the face you had there, Doctor, of all the different veggies and things. Now, I want to share with you 2 case studies and then I'll sit down. 2 case studies that show that these principles found in the biblical writings actually are very proven. National Geographic magazine and other sources, television and so on, have been talking about some of these studies. The secrets of living longer in this case. A study of Sardinians, people living in Italy, Sardinia, that part of Italy, Okinawans, Japanese people up in Okinawa, and Californian Seventh-day Adventists, revealed that these groups produce a high rate of centenarians, people who live to 100, suffer a fraction of the disease that commonly kill people in other parts of the developed world, and enjoy more health years of life. Now, I want to just share with you the Adventist lifestyle studies, because these have been presented on many forums. They've been going on for over 40 years now, for longevity, for living longer. Notice Adventist men live 10 years longer. Adventist women live 6 years longer. Then we have, for all cancers, Adventist men have a 60% lower death rate from all cancers. Adventist women, a 76% lower death rate. And then when we come to things like heart disease and so on, it's amazing. Bowel cancer, 62% lower for Adventists, and breast cancer is a whopping 85% lower for Adventists. And then finally, with coronary heart disease, Adventist men have a 60% lower incident, and Adventist women a 98% lower incident. Now, the question is why? Now, it's not because they're Seventh-day Adventists. It's simply because they follow the principles, in most cases, of what we find in the Bible. Anyone can have this health advantage if they follow the principles that are found in the writings of Moses. By the way, they did studies on Adventists, comparing Adventists who follow those principles and Adventists who don't. And only the people who have follow the principles have the health advantage, which is quite sensible. They follow in the principles, they get the advantage. So that can be any one of us in society who can have that same advantage if we follow those same health principles that have been recognised as sound scientific health principles. Thank you. If you could advance that. It's not clicking over here. Thanks so much. Oh, there we go. Case study number 2, I want to come to ancient Babylon. Ancient Babylon is a very famous site. Just quickly, Nebuchadnezzar was a famous king of Babylon, mentioned in the biblical writings, but also lots of archaeological tablets regarding this man have been discovered by archaeologists. He made 3 raids on Jerusalem. For 605 BC, 597 and 586, he actually destroyed the city of Jerusalem. In his first raid, he took a captive a number of captives, and one of them was a king of Israel called Jehoiachin. Now, what's fascinating is that the biblical writers mention this man, but they also mention the fact that he was given a ration. Notice what it says: Nebuchadnezzar took Jehoiachin captive to Babylon. In the Bible also mentions the food ration he was given. Notice what it says: as for his, Jehoiachin's, provisions, there was a regular ration given him by the king of Babylon, a portion for each day, until the day of his death, all the days of his life. In other words, on Monday he gets Kentucky Fried, on Tuesday he gets, pavlova, on Wednesday, whatever it is. He lists all the different things that are in his ration, his provisions. Now, what's fascinating is they've actually discovered the very ration tablet of this man. It's in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. This is the Babylonian ration tablet of this guy. Incredible historical accuracy in the biblical writings, archaeologists have discovered. But there was another captive who also was given a ration, and his name was Daniel. He and his 3 mates were taken captive in the first raid, and when they came in, they saw the food that the Babylonians gave them. And they said, hey, this disagrees with the principles Moses has given. We don't want to eat it. Notice what they said. Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion, or that is the ration, it's the same word that's used there, of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. He says, no, we don't want to eat that because it's not good for our health, basically. Now, notice what happened. So Daniel said to the steward, please test your servants for 10 days and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Now, Daniel's not saying just give us a lettuce leaf and a glass of water. He's basically saying give us a vegetarian diet. Give us a diet that's got lots of fruits, nuts and grains and just water, which is better than any other drink that you can drink. And that'll do us. Now, notice the result in just 10 days. The Bible says that in 10 days on this plant-based diet, at the end of 10 days, their features appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies, because the king had all sorts of, we would probably say today fast foods and a lot of other stuff. Just 10 days made a difference. And that sort of change in a person's diet is actually found in modern studies today too. It can be very quick that you start to feel the difference when you change your diet. Now, after 3 years of this, they had to have their examinations by the king of Babylon, and notice what happens when the king examined them. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in all his realm. Thus Daniel continued until the first year of King Cyrus, which is a long time period. In other words, this diet made them think better, made them look better, and it's a very simple diet that you find in the biblical records. This study bears this out. Now, autopsies have actually been done on mummified bodies, and it's noted that they had the same sort of lifestyle diseases as modern society. Parasitic worms from what they ate, also cardiovascular disease similar to our own, strokes, arthritis, tooth decay and gallstones. These are modern Western lifestyle diseases. You see, the reason they had these is because they weren't following the principles. They didn't know about them themselves, which is why God told Israel these words. He said to the Israelite people, notice, if you diligently heed the voice of the Lord your God, do what is right in his sight, follow the principles, give ear to his commands and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you, for I am the Lord who heals you. In other words, this is smart to follow these principles which have been proven so well. So these discoveries of archaeology show us very clearly that there are very sound scientific health principles found in this ancient book, very relevant to life. But one other thing that we discover from Daniel is Daniel's book also contains, that's written about 100 to 200 BC, it contains predictions with a proven track record. And we're going to be sharing some of those in a couple of weeks' time at a program called Prophetica. These predictions come from a guy who knew how to look after his body, and he was given some great insights in not only to future to his day a little bit, but way into our own time. He gives predictions concerning our own time, which we're going to be having a look at together. The program is called Prophetica, and I hope you can join us. It'll be in the Glandore Community Centre, and it's in 2 weeks' time, August the 5th, from 5 to 9. We'll be providing you with a meal as well. 5 sort of TED-type talks packed with some great information. In this series of programs, let me tell you, you'll understand the meaning of current global events. You're going to know exactly where we're heading in the future, and you're going to be able to discover how to face the future with absolute hope and confidence. Finally, you'll find increased meaning and purpose in life. All of that's packed into some of the tremendous prophecies that we find in 2 twin books from Daniel and John on the island of Patmos. So I hope you will be able to join us in that presentation. If you want a book, you just need to go to prophetica.com and you will see on that site where you can book in. All right, it's free and you'll enjoy it. I just ran one just recently, 2 in Sydney in actual fact, and people really enjoy those presentations. So we're glad that you were with us today to hear these amazing presentations that our doctors have shared and what this amazing book has for each one of us. Well, I'll hand you over to Fabiano, and he can share with you what's happening next. I think you're going to provide some good food for us, if I heard right.
What a wonderful program that was, our presentation, I should say. And yes, it's been a wonderful program at the same time. Thank you to Nathaniel and Dr. Isaac and Gary Webster, a pastor, evangelist, archaeologist. The list goes on, I believe. Okay. So we do have, yes, a wonderful lunch, a light lunch, right at the back in the church hall. And I invite as much as I'm able to, once again, to just come and spend some time together right at the back. Obviously, you can ask Gary, Nathaniel, and Isaac some of your questions as well. And I would like to encourage you to invite your friends to the Prophetica, which is the program that Gary just mentioned, happening once again here in South Australia. We're privileged actually to have this program run in 2 places. So if you're from the southern part of Adelaide, you can come to Glandore, which is about 5 or so minutes from here, really. It's not that far. And if you are on the northern side of Adelaide, we also have the same program running at Mawson Lakes. So once again, go to prophetica.com and register. So once again, let's just head to the back of the church. There's a wonderful light lunch which has been prepared for you all. Thank you.